actually, this last maybe a week, 5 or 6 days, me and Phoenix and some friends, we started playing Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. What have your some of your early thoughts on Tiny Tina's Wonderlands?
It's fun. I mean, I think we probably share a fairly similar opinion on it, and I think it's not anything too contradictory to probably what everybody else is saying. Like, this is somewhat of a return to forms, I think, for Borderlands. Like, I mean, I've always liked Borderlands.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I played the original. I liked it just for, the mindless, grindy, looter shootery aspect of it. Like, sometimes all I want is a game that I can just turn off my brain, shoot some stuff, see some numbers go up, and then call it a
Mm-hmm.
night. Borderlands has always kind of been that for me. And two was definitely a highlight. Like, I mean, few I think villains really hold up to something like Handsome
Handsome
Jack or
Jack, yeah.
kind of the way that game played out. So all great. I mean, we did some awesome cosplay for it. I mean, I definitely have a affinity for
Ooh,
Borderlands.
maybe I'll throw up a picture when I'm in my editing. I'll,
Oh yeah,
I'll throw up
slip it
our
in there.
pic.
By the way,
Um,
I made his claptrap outfit. So when he's showing it off, realize I am the architect of that.
Man, that I I was sweating in that thing. Just imagine a fat nerd in a giant cardboard
I
box.
still got it in my garage, man. It was great.
You should sell that
Um,
instead of your games. And get money off that.
yeah. But anyways, so with all that being said, I was big into Borderlands, and then 3 came out, and I mean, gameplay solid. I mean, it was still the Borderlands formula, but I don't know, it didn't have that magic. I mean, it's hard to, I think, top what 2 was, especially from like, a narrative standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
But I really think that they missed the mark, at least from the narrative. Like, the gameplay was probably as good, if not better. But man, I didn't like the Twitch streamer narrative thing. I think my biggest issue is like Borderlands to me is always, silly, but like even like in Borderlands 2, there were moments it kind of got, it got serious, took itself seriously, and it kind of earned that. Like the stuff with Handsome Jack when he like took out spoiler, took out Roland, the stuff with his daughter, like all that got a
Mm-hmm.
little, a little dark. Which was nice. Well, not nice, but it was a welcome, moment of kind of, solidarity moving into the rest of the game. And then they tried to do similar stuff with the Twitch streamer aspect, and it didn't
I
land.
think what the problem was is that the reason why for me I felt like Borderlands 3 was super rough and cringy is like you were saying. I just think the kind of theme that they chose as kind of for that game, which the whole theme was, the streaming thing. I don't know. I don't.
Felt really dated. Like even before the game came
Yes,
out, it was
yes.
already like, really? Go with? I mean, you play that game in 10 years from now. I'm not saying they won't have, streamers, but that's going to be an evolving, thing as far
Hmm.
as what streaming
I
and
just
Twitch and all that stuff
I
is.
just
So
don't know how much like many people connect with streaming. Like there's a lot of people out there who are consuming video games and consuming media and aren't necessarily streaming or they're tuning into people that are streaming. Like I don't know. I just think there was a lack of connection there with possibly some people. And like you said, that whole idea is like dated. Like not dated. People are streaming and doing all that kind of things, but just the idea of that being funny or that being a
it felt
joke.
very much like a story of that time, and
Yes.
I don't mean
Mm-hmm.
like the time in Borderlands, like of our time.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that really just kind of separated it for me. Like what made Borderlands 2 work was it was always, it was relatable, but it was also very much out there in its own little world. So I feel like it's a story that's going to stand on its own moving forward. Those characters are going to stand on their own moving forward. I
It
don't feel
was.
like
I
that's
thought it
the
was
case
a
for
pretty
3.
universal, just theme and story. Just
Yeah.
evil corporation, evil man wants to kill everyone and wants to, take over the world, take over a planet, get all the treasures.
Well,
It's like,
there was actually a lot more to than that. Like the story of Handsome Jack was actually a lot more nuanced than, and that was the nice thing about it too. They had a lot of depth to it, especially if you played like what the pre-sequel and stuff like that. Like
mm-hmm.
they really kind of fleshed out, Jack. Not that he was like sympathetic, but actually kind of was in the pre-sequel. I don't know. Regardless, much better
Because I
story in
remember in
two, much
some of
better
the
build up.
the codex or dialogue things, like the whole thing with his daughter and everything, like that was all like in certain points it was super like yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah. It was super relatable just because, he was this guy. I don't even remember. What was the issue? I can't go into topics. I don't remember Borderlands 2, like, at all. I just remember, like,
regardless.
it being kind of heartfelt and, him just totally going off the deep end. I don't even remember why he goes off the deep end. I don't remember specifics.
Regardless, I mean, I think we're kind of get off the point because it's supposed to be a Tiny Tina's, but 2 was good, written well.
Oh, yeah.
They earned that narrative. 3 didn't. So 3 has kind of left me with a sour taste. Also, I mean, I don't recall if you had the same experience, but it was buggy for a lot of it. Performance issues were pretty prevalent. I eventually,
3?
I think, yeah, I mean, I
Yeah,
started
I
initially
remember.
on Xbox, and I had some of that, and then I tried to play again on PC, like probably like 6 months after they had some
Mm.
DLC come out, and it was even worse. Granted, I don't have the most powerful PC anymore, but even based upon minimal specs, it should have been fine, and just I don't
This
know, not a
this one
great
I,
experience.
this one I don't feel like has had those kind of problems. I mean, the big problems we've had have been, getting into each other's matches and connectivity. But other than that, whenever we get into a game, it feels solid. Like I don't think.
For the most part, I've run into some little issues like and maybe it's mostly connective connection based stuff. Like my inventory won't load, everything's empty. There's some
I
UI
haven't seen
glitches, or
that.
like
Yeah.
on the main screen when I try to like go into certain menus, it like hangs for a long time to the point where I almost thought it was frozen a couple of times, but it was just waiting. I think a lot of that is just connection stuff. So I don't know what's going on with their servers and whatnot.
I would say my
Um,
big problem so far with the game is mainly just like graphical. Like I just don't think the graphics or the I just don't think the game is that particularly good looking. I don't think the frame rate I don't feel like the frame rate is all that spectacular.
Frame rate's fine. Well, frame rate's going to be hard to, I think, really quantify in that way because that's going to depend on your setup and your rig. Like, you run this on a good PC, I'm sure frame rates are going to be fantastic. And I've been playing on my Series X, and everything's felt,
No, I've been
pretty
playing it on
smooth.
Series X. I've been
I'm imagining it's running at 60. Like, it hasn't looked, choppier than that. So I don't have a frame rate issue. I agree with what you're saying. Like, the graphics definitely are feeling dated. I don't think that I'm really looking at that as like a downside to this game, though. I just feel like it's time for Borderlands to, update their style a little bit. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong. There's definitely more graphical, fidelity happening in this game. You got more particle effects. Some of the resolution's a little better, but it's still at its core feels like the 360 Borderlands 2
yeah.
experience.
Oh yeah.
Just slightly better coat of paint, better resolution and frame rate, but and it's the art style is what it is. This is the Borderlands art style through and through. It looks pretty much the same. I think there's room for improvement there. I'm not exactly sure what that should look like. If it's some new shading techniques, lighting. I think that the world just feels kind of flat in areas. Like they don't use a lot of normal maps in places. And for those anything about modeling or texturing, it basically just gives some depth to your textures, and I think that's missing in a lot of places. So I don't know. It's not a deal breaker. The game looks good and cartoony, and it definitely, when it needs to look decent, it does. There's definitely some cool moments. The one, without spoiling anything, moment on the dock when everything kind of goes crazy was a
Oh
cool
yeah.
looking moment.
I
Um,
agree.
but I think they're just overdue for an update, as I'm not exactly sure what that update needs to look like just yet, but I don't know. We'll see. But
I
beyond that, I mean, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. I'm talking
No,
too much.
I was going to say, I just wanted to wrap up my thought from earlier where I was talking about the
Mhm.
disconnect with the theme of Borderlands 3 versus this one. This one just it's a much more universal theme that any video gamer, any nerd can connect with. The whole idea of just playing D&D and just the idea of role playing. Like that's, it's universal. Like everyone,
It's fantasy. I mean,
yeah.
that's an easy, kind of genre to dig into. Like everybody's
Mhm.
familiar with it. People, across the board have different, relationships with the fantasy genre. But this one hits on a lot of the tropes. It's fun. It's not. It's in some ways it makes it kind of safe because they don't have to come up with their own thing. Like that was the thing
Mhm.
with 3. They had to kind of come up with everything about that game that made that game, and they definitely did some cool stuff. But this game just gets to dig in on those kind of cliche niche tropes, and it's fun because of that. Like you got the fun little pirate world, you got the fun medieval area, and it's just I don't know, it's fun.
If you really think about it too, like even a game like the pre-sequel, I felt like had a more structured, more likable kind of theme and environment. Like even the whole moon space thing was kind of interesting to see the Borderlands world, taken to space. I felt like was more entertaining than Borderlands 3 just kind of feeling like its world just kind of was more deserty, more Borderlands 2 type looking, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean the standard just Borderlands, yeah, open deserty areas definitely
Hmm.
got a little stale, but um,
Although I will say
yeah,
the prequel wasn't that good either. It was okay.
it was a much more limited game than what the other ones were. I enjoyed it for the narrative aspect of it, and the gameplay was fine. But anyways, I don't know. I'll tell you, I was disappointed with the connection issues. That's probably if I was going to pick one true downside, it's that. And yeah, so to be fair, it's a new game, just came out. It's pretty common when a game comes out first few days, you have server issues. I get that, but it's always disappointing, especially in a game like this that, at least for me and I imagine majority of people, this is a co-op game through and through. This is the game you get with your buddies to play through and have, just a stupid fun time. So not having an easy ability to do so on the first couple of days when you've organized your time. That's the other thing too. Like we are all now older than we used to be. We're not
Hmm.
college kids. We have a lot of open time. So scheduling our time to meet together with everything going on and get a few hours to play is not the easiest thing in the world. So you do all that and then you try to log
I've got
in.
like a few hours after like 8 o'clock. Like after 8
Yeah.
p.m. It's like, all right, let's play.
Like
Same
I
thing
only
with
have a
you.
few nights that are off. I have to wait till the kids get to bed. It's just like all this stuff. So I value that time. So when it doesn't pan out,
Hmm.
regardless if it's a reasonable rationale for why, technical issues, etc., it still sucks. And we had plenty of issues. The first night we
Hmm.
couldn't get our buddy who was playing on PC to hop into the crossplay, which, I mean, to be fair, I'm glad they are implementing crossplay, and I know there's some technical issues there, but the fact that it didn't work immediately was a pain. And then the other night we all tried to just get on Xbox, and I couldn't join. It was
Hmm.
just it did improve. I mean, the third night we didn't really have any issues, except I think some people were lagging, but it's disappointing. Will it improve? I'm sure. If is that something you should keep in mind if you are buying this game now? Yes. If you're listening to this, months into the future, you can probably ignore everything I'm saying. The game's probably in a great state. Um, but as of right now, it's disappointing. I kind of wish they would have stress tested it a little more, or did something just to guarantee that day one stability would have been a little stronger.
Hmm.
As far as the game, though, like it's fun. Where you mentioned the theming's great. I like the multi-classing system they have. The voice acting's solid. There's a few things with Will Arnett in it that I don't like. So,
Really?
um,
I haven't paid attention to the story. If that's what you're referencing, I've been kind of just running around shooting stuff the entire time.
well, yeah, I'm sure I'm missing some of the story beats, but the voice acting is solid. Like Wanda Sykes is pretty funny.
Hmm.
Will Arnett as the Demon Lord. I mean, I just like his voice for that kind of thing. Like
Yeah.
he has a very certain, I don't know, condescending tone to it that's fun. Um, Andy Samberg, I don't care nearly as much
Who's
about. He's
Andy
kind of whatever.
Samberg?
He is Valentine.
Oh. Oh, I thought he sounded familiar. Huh.
It's weird because it doesn't really sound like him, but it does.
I thought it was Sean Shamel when he first started playing, but
No, it's Samberg.
huh.
Um, But
Interesting.
regardless, I mean, for overall though, I mean, none of the voice acting's bad. Even Sandberg's, I mean, it's good. It's just not as standout. Like Wanda Sykes just has like a voice,
Yeah.
like,
Um,
um,
Something I wanted to kind of bring up is when we're talking about, the connectivity issues kind of affecting some of our kind of experiences with the early game. Were there any other games that you can think of that like royally messed up your experience because of that? I mean, I could name off the top of my head Arkham Knight. If I remember buying that game and I could not play it for like the first month.
you're talking about like technical issues or
Yeah, I
connectivity
just
specific.
went on a random thought, just like it's not often that I see a game that I feel like is like drastically being dragged by certain issues. I mean, I feel like that was one.
I mean, I remember the Batman game being bad. There was another. Oh man, what was it? It was in my mind for a second. It slipped my mind. Maybe it'll come back to me. But there have been a handful, and I mean, it can
It can
really kind
really,
of,
yeah. Arkham
it
Knight
can,
never really like took off the ground, and that was a good
yeah.
game.
Like if you can't play a game well within the first week or so, that's going to lose me. Um, and it's happened before. There've been a few games that I've tried. They've had technical issues or connectivity issues, and I've tried for close to a week to try to get up and running or getting settings right or whatever it is. Wait on a patch. And if it doesn't come, I'm just going to move on to something else. I mean, I don't have time to wait for this game to kind of get its act in order. So why would I waste all my time doing that? And I'm sure I'm not the only person to do that.
Hmm.
But I think what's sad is that's the state of more and more games. Like, it's not even always just a game is technically bad, but games come out and they're missing content, missing features,
Fallout
missing this, missing that.
76,
Oh,
Battlefield
you can
2042, Cyberpunk,
Halo Infinite. The list goes on.
mm-hmm.
And I think it's just a really unfortunate side
Sea of
effect of the type
Thieves.
of yeah, but I don't know. It's disappointing. I don't necessarily think that's ever going to change at this point. It's become kind of expected in the gaming community, or kind of at least, it's allowed by the consumers pretty much. We don't put up a huge fuss about it, and they're just going to keep doing it as long as nobody's complaining too much about it. As long as they keep paying for it, we're going to keep having to deal with it.
Something I did kind of just want to bring up is I'm very curious about how the success or failure of this game affects Borderlands 4. I mean, I guess that's probably not a great thing to bring up, seeing as how I don't know. I was just kind of curious how you think it might affect how wacky or crazy Borderlands 4 is. And the main reason why I say it might be a stupid thing to bring up is because they're going to get weird and wacky anyways. I'm just kind of curious how like this type drastic departure from the world of Pandora.
I think they'll go back to Pandora. But I think they'll maybe be more open to go back and forth on stuff like this. Like, here's the thing: this is not the first time they did this. They did this with the DLC, and Tiny Tina's was on Dragon Keep. So, and I'd be fine if they kind of went back to that. You have kind of the main game, and they have the weird, wacky DLCs. Like, I don't necessarily want a D&D version of this every single time they release a new Borderlands game. And here's the thing: I mean, I think they had talked about it. Oh man, I'm trying to remember how 3 worked now. Did you go to different? You went to different planets in 3, didn't you?
Oof,
You did.
I don't remember.
Yeah, because you were on the ship and you flew around to different places. I feel like that maybe didn't get explored well enough because you weren't on a desert the entire time. Like, I think you were on Pandora at the beginning, but you went to a bunch of other planets.
Borderlands are just they're like I love those games, but they're just every time I play them because there's so many people playing with us. I never pay attention to or maybe it's hard to pay attention when you're talking the whole time with you and
you're doing like weird little side quests. You have a little chat box going on in the corner. You have 3 people yelling about running out. Like, we were playing last night, and you and our buddy Danny, you went off in a completely different area on a side quest. I mean, my other buddy were going towards the main quest, and we didn't realize it.
I thought we were going towards the main quest, but
well, that's actually another issue I'm going to point out. I'm not sure if it's just like a I don't know, connectivity or updating syncing issue. But I found it's really hard to be able to know where your main quest is when you're playing together. Like, sometimes the marker is not pointing in the right direction, and people just kind of go off. So the marker system's kind of weird. Seeing where your friends are on the map, if they're too far away, you can't even tell where they're at. And the map's hard to kind of ping to them. I don't know. I find that pretty difficult as far as organizing and like understanding where your team's at, because you can spread out really quick. These maps are huge, just like in Borderlands 2. Or Borderlands 3 for that matter. So, I mean, if you start going different directions, good luck kind of bringing yourselves back in. Now, that's just one other thing I didn't necessarily love about it. I feel like they could have maybe streamlined how you see your other members across the battlefield, if you will.
I guess just the only other thing that kind of have to bring up is, do you think the fact that Randy Pitchford had almost no say in the creative process of this game, because he stepped down from Gearbox CEO, do you think is that the reason why this game might feel better than Borderlands 3? That might be a dumb thing to say because he's
still a part of the
he's
company,
still a part of
isn't he?
Borderlands 2 and 1.
He's still president, isn't he? Is that what he is? He went from CEO to president or something?
No, he transitioned from the CEO of the software side to the movie making
he went to a different
side.
division.
So now he's in charge of their movies, which
I would be very surprised if he didn't still have a presence in all of this. And here's the I don't know. I mean, granted, I don't know his direct impact on any of this. I don't know how much of what he wanted to include in Borderlands 3 is what actually made it in and affected our feelings on the game. Was he the one that decided the Twitch streamers were the way to go, or someone completely different? Like, I don't think it's ever been pinpointed. Who. Caused the good or the bad in the Borderlands franchise. So I'm not going to go and attribute any of it to him. As far as I know, he had the best decisions about the game. The good stuff we liked about it is all because of him. I don't know. I mean, you could argue things you don't like about Randy Pitchford in general, but as far as how he handles the Borderlands franchise, I don't know. I don't have really any insight on if he's done good, bad, or in between on it.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. Is there anything else really to say? I mean, so far I would just say overall thoughts. I'm really enjoying it. I mean, it's always
I'm
saying that's always a weird thing when you're playing a game where it's hard to dislike a game when you're playing with three of your best friends. Like that's, I don't know. I mean, I would say I'm enjoying it.
I'm definitely enjoying it, and even just looking at the gameplay now, I want to go back and play it. And it's not just because of the friends; I mean, that's part of it. But I'm invested in the gameplay loop right now. I want to see where it's going, get new guns. So I mean, if you have ever enjoyed Borderlands, this is still that at its core. I mean, there are some changes to it that make it, I think, a little faster in some ways, a little more flexible is what you can do with your classes. So I think some people will appreciate that. But if you like Borderlands, you should check this out. I mean, I'm curious how long the game is. If it's as big in scope as BL3, it's starting to feel like it. It's longer than I thought it was already. So, I mean, assuming that you're looking for just a big, meaty Borderlands adventure, this game should, check that box off for you.